And welcome to episode 5 of the Kaiju CATACLYSM podcast. I am your host, DREAGEN, and joining me as always is...
Ashley!
Such enthusiasm.
I was only following suit.
Wait, what?
I was following suit.
Oh, you're following suit. Why, was I being enthusiastic?
Yes.
I'll have to make note of that so I never make that mistake again. I am so sorry. Alright, so... Originally, we were going to talk about Shin Gojira, Godzilla Resurgence, on this episode, but we haven't seen it yet. We will be seeing it next month, October 12th, 2016. So we will be talking about the movie, rest assured. Be kind of stupid of us not to. But we didn't want to go too much longer without, doing an episode. So we were kind of trying to figure out what we could talk about in the meantime, because I didn't really want to do like a quote-unquote filler episode, even though I know ultimately it's what this episode might come across as. But at that, okay, well, with movies like Shin coming out, with the legendary Godzilla cinematic universe, developing, with more Pacific Rim movies coming out. I'm saying movies, trying to be optimistic there. So at least another movie. The kaiju kind of genre is, again, it's growing, it's expanding, it's reaching new markets, new audiences, but it's still not there yet. It's not something like a superhero movie where automatically it's going to get all this attention because that genre is so big and so established. But if you look at that genre, even that has started expanding into other mediums. Like one of the big ones that comes to mind, television. That's something new, but like when you start looking at things like streaming services like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, these are kind of new outlets, new avenues for studios to start putting out material that didn't exist like 20 years ago. In terms of like the making smaller scale kaiju films that not being cheap in terms of quality. Basically, they're B movies, but once upon a time, B movies were actually good movies in terms of like they were entertaining film. They were B movies because they didn't have like big
effects budget.
Yeah, they were cheap in that sense, but they were only cheap where they couldn't afford to be expensive, but they would still try. And for like kaiju films, two that come to mind were really the only two like were kind of independent kaiju films from the West that were produced in the 90s were Zarkor the Invader and Kra the Sea Monster from a small little, now kind of defunct studio called Monster Island Entertainment. They were like a subsidiary of another company called Moonbeam Entertainment. I don't know if they're still around. But, and that was going to be their whole thing. They were going to it was basically a bunch of people who got together and said, we love kaiju films, and we just want to start producing our own, kaiju movies. They were super cheap. Obviously tokusatsu, but even the suits weren't, the most incredible looking things. But it was a total love letter. You could tell it was made by people who love these films, for people who love these films. And back then, that was really the only way you could do something like that. Unless it was a big, major, blockbuster production or something from abroad, that was the only way you could do something like that. And I was always wondering, okay, well, yes, a lot of the new big theater films coming out have new special effects, CGI. You could still do a kaiju film on a more modest budget and utilizing like suitimation and all that. And I was thinking, why no one's really doing that? And I'm thinking, well, that's the thing. We don't really need a small little independent studio like that to do that thing anymore. When you look at something like Netflix is probably like the biggest example of kind of like an independent studio. They're producing movies now themselves too with some...
Yeah, I think they even recently said they're trying to push to have 50% of Netflix be all original stuff.
Yeah, and it's not even just series, but films as well. And these are films where, if they had been released in a theater, they probably would have just been buried and been in there for a couple weeks and then been out, and no one would have heard about it.
Well, and again, even still, a lot of the stuff, we've seen a lot of stuff that's independent movies from, abroad, independent movies like YouTubers make, that kind of stuff, Kickstarter films. So it's really cool that, basically if you make a movie, it's pretty much guaranteed you could get it on Netflix it seems like.
And I think, so yeah, with something like Netflix, I know Ricky Gervais did a movie on there not too long ago. I forget what it was called. We watched it, it was good, but I can't remember the name. But, it wasn't a big deal movie. It was actually kind of a small scale, just kind of like dramedy, I guess, if you want. But And he even said that, yeah, if we had pushed to get this in theaters, it would have cost a lot of money. We would have to promote it in theaters, and ultimately, given the nature of the movie, who cares? It would have been just buried and gone, and we would have even known we made the damn movie. On Netflix, it got top billing. When you logged into your Netflix account, it's the first thing that popped, that big promotion, the new big Netflix movie. So it gives films that normally wouldn't get any attention a lot of attention, and everyone has Netflix, and unless it's a giant, big studio production, just because you get your movie in a theater doesn't really mean it's going to get attention. There's a lot of movies that come out that a lot of people don't even know have come out.
They're technically considered flops because they don't make money.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you look at studio costs, or the cost to get a film in a theater, what you have to pay for promotion, advertisement, all that, it gets really, really expensive. So unless you have a film that's pretty much guaranteed to really get you that money back, it kind of behooves studios to just kind of go more now the streaming route, the more low budget route, and in a lot of ways they're going to get more attention. I mean, if you look at some of the big kind of entertainment stories or big kind of media based things that have been getting really hyped up and doing very well, a lot of it's stuff that's not even coming on theater. I mean, Netflix has that show Stranger Things, which is literally all anyone can talk about, and it's a smaller budget, just
it's probably the biggest show to be on Netflix this year, or at least the most talked about.
It's definitely the biggest show on Netflix right now, and it's one of the biggest shows period right now, and it's that big, and it's just 8 episodes, and it's something we're on, it could have never have been what it was had it been put on like network television or even cable for that matter.
They pitched it to networks and stuff, but nobody would do it.
Yeah,
and
nobody
then finally
would do
Netflix said they would.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Networks are kind of mainstream television is very formulaic. That's why. I mean, I guess if you like that formula, it's great. But for
you got your news, your reality TV, your sitcoms, and whatever else. So
I mean, and again, I'm not really a fan of kind of mainstream television. I don't like that formula. So if you're not interested in that formula, mainstream television is gonna, it's not really gonna be your thing. But then you have now alternatives to that, and that's. So when you're looking, okay, how can we milk the kaiju genre? Which I don't mind milking something as long as what you're producing is good. By all means, make a buck off it wherever you can. I'm not gonna play the artist card and talk about like the integrity. Like, no, make money. I'm more than happy to give you my money as long as you're giving me something I want to spend my money on. So how can we milk the genre then? Again, look at these kind of these new outlets that exist now that once upon a time did not. In terms of doing maybe smaller scale films, you can use something like Netflix. Even doing like a mini series.
Well, it's funny, they did that King Kong one. Granted, it was like the DreamWorks animated one.
Yeah.
And it was a little more kid-like than I think everyone was expecting when it was announced.
Yeah.
But still, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, they utilize a streaming service. And that's probably a situation where... had it been released like as a Saturday morning cartoon or whatever, most of us or anyone really would never even heard of it. But because it's on Netflix, suddenly, okay, it's got more eyes on it. I mean, ultimately, I don't really think it made much of a dent. I haven't really heard anyone talk about it since it came out. But the fact that we even knew it was happening.
The fact that they did it at all, too.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think the kaiju genre is one or at least two maybe really big blockbusters away from getting kind of that snowball rolling where everyone's like, okay, what can we do with this now? I mean, it's made money. I mean, Pacific Rim did all right. Godzilla did pretty good. Shin Gojira is doing exceptionally well in Japan, and it's getting received well abroad. But I think we still need that massive, giant, like $800 million plus at the worldwide box office blockbuster for everyone to like, okay, let's scramble and try to make as much cash. And that's not to say that everything everyone's going to do is going to be great. But again, a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want every single kaiju movie in the world to be this massive, giant. Hey, why can't I have smaller one? Well, this is how you can do it. And this is why anyone would do it. It's because now there's enough of an interest in it. Now it's marketable enough, it's profitable enough to kind of warrant that kind of time. Because why is someone going to make a kaiju film what could be the most best suitimation we've ever seen, but a movie where there's a guy in a monster suit wrecking a city? Why would someone produce a smaller movie like that or a series like that. Well, they're doing it because right now that's the hot ticket. I mean, you look at like Marvel's kind of Netflix TV or cinematic universe, not cinematic, but I guess television universe. You have what, Daredevil, Jessica Jones.
Luke Cage is this month. It's coming up in a couple days.
Yeah,
Here.
I know they've kind of started promoting Iron Fist.
Punisher.
Punisher, yep. And a lot of people are actually I've talked to they right now they like the Netflix TV universe for Marvel more than they do the movies.
We are some of those.
Yeah, I mean I like the movies, don't get me wrong, but I've never been again a big superhero guy. So for me, I don't have like an emotional attachment to like Captain America or Iron Man. I just take the movies as what they are.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, but they're very, very PG-13, which is fun. I'm not saying everything needs to be a hard, gritty R, but I'm just saying they're very much one thing. And on Netflix, you can take kind of this universe of superheroes and you can make it another thing. Well, I mean, they exist together, but they're also kind of apart. I mean, Netflix is
they're
kind
more
of
realistic superheroes. Like, the approach to the stories are more realistic, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's grittier. I mean,
even though they are.
I mean, they are, but they're not grittier because of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's what it comes down to is that it's just different. I mean, one size doesn't fit all. I'm not saying everything needs to be like Punisher-esque where it's super hard R, but at the same time, not everything needs to be super fluffy and light either. And I think when you have kind of
I think the best thing about from what we've seen anyway so far, like with Daredevil and Jessica Jones, is obviously the movies, especially what's his face that did like Avengers and stuff.
Joss Whedon.
Yeah. They kind of, they're not comedies, but they're super funny now. Like, that's like part of the
they're
thing.
very witty.
Yeah, witty.
There's a lot of which is great. I enjoy that.
They are, but they're kind of overly witty. Like, but I mean, it works, but like it's very much.
It's very
Do
much.
You get what I mean?
No. I get what you mean. It very much is a very specific thing.
Yeah, and like I think the like Daredevil and Jessica Jones, they have that, but it's not like over the top.
Yeah,
that is over the top.
Well, again, I think
I mean.
I think when they look at the movies and they want like in the theater they want those big like crowd laugh moments.
Yeah, they're trying to get a reaction out of you. Where in the show it's very natural.
It's more personal because unless you have a big group of friends over, it's kind of more just for you and yours. I mean, you don't have to watch Jessica Jones in a giant room filled with people. Or I mean, you can make the experience is kind of your own. So they can kind of tailor it a little bit more. And also because they're not as expensive to produce, they don't need to make $1 billion just to break even anymore. Because that's the thing too. Movies, big blockbuster films are increasingly they're becoming a lot more expensive to make. And the problem you have when a movie starts getting like when a movie costs $200 million to make, you're gonna need and then you spend like 50 or 60 million in advertisement, and then you have to factor in what it costs to put it in a theater. You basically
usually special events and stuff.
Yeah, you basically and then you hear the movies like, oh, this movie made $1 billion. You kind of almost have to make $1 billion now. Now, when I hear a movie made $1 billion, it's not like 15 years ago where oh wow, $1 billion. Now it's like it's impressive. It's definitely good. But $1 billion today for a major blockbuster is not what $1 billion was 20 years ago. When Titanic made $1 billion, it was the first movie to cross the $1 billion mark. It was a very big deal. When what was it? What was the last one that crossed? When Star Wars was Episode 7.
Force Awakens.
Yeah, when that one crossed $1 billion. Okay, good. A, I don't think anyone was surprised.
I know.
B, not as big of a deal because A, films have done it since then, and B, when you factor in how much it costs to go into these movies, it's more like, well, thank God I made $1 billion because how much money does it?
Do now, basically.
Yeah, but when you factor in all the marketing, the toy, all the money
I think they said on average like a third of the budget is just in marketing or something like that.
Oh yeah. Well,
like it's a lot.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that triumph of cinema that was.
The movie was about 200 million. I think it was around the $200 million mark. I think it's like kind of that's like the safe. It used to be like 100 million for a big blockbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're 200 million. They spent, and I shit you not, because when I heard this number, I was like, what? They spent $100 million on advertising. The cost of some blockbuster movies, or just or a good chunk, yeah,
half of their budget,
yeah, on just. Well, that was the 100 million on top of the 200 million they spent on the actual production
I
budget.
guess that was a third.
So
but...
to make the movie, it cost $200 million, and then to promote the movie, it cost them an additional $100 million. So when they're all said and done, and that's not even including the theater costs. So not including theater costs, that movie cost them $300 million to make.
Yikes.
So now let's say, okay, let's make a series of like smaller kaiju films on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then we'll use, tokusatsu style effects. I mean, really nice suits, but like, we'll still use
you
that.
Could even with the CG now, you could even do
and you can
CG,
or you can even use CG to kind of augment the suits.
Yeah.
For $300 million, how many of those kind of films do you think something like Netflix could produce, or a mini series, or hell, a series, whatever?
Say a full blown series.
Yeah,
at
if you
that
wanted
point.
to. And that's my point. Is that. Again, you look at something like Stranger Things, that series, it's 8 episodes, and it is getting so much hype and attention and love and praise, more so than some big, giant blockbuster films that are coming out. And it's because, at the end of the day, it's good. Mm-hmm. It's just good.
Quality.
Yeah, it's not expensive. I mean, you can tell by looking at it that it did not, I mean, I'm sure season 2 is going to have a much larger production budget.
Yeah.
But you look at season 1, and it's a good looking show, but you can see that they were smart. They shot it in a way, they staged in a way where they weren't doing more than they could. And it's 8 episodes, and it's really kind of paced like a long movie. So essentially, it's a really, really long B movie, or what B movies used to be like, where effects, and even though some of the effects were done really well, but they even hide a lot of the effects well. They hide
they do it smart.
Yeah, exactly, and that's my point. And the fact that it's not this giant wall to wall, effects driven extravaganza, doesn't take away the fact that it's really fun. It's really, really entertaining, and we plowed through it so fast we just couldn't stop watching it.
We paced ourselves, so we watched it in 2 nights instead of 1.
Yeah, basically. So if you can make kaiju films that way, like smaller films, more more modest budget, but just make good movies. I mean, the biggest thing, in the kaiju genre right now could be like a small film or miniseries on Netflix. Mm-hmm. Because it'll be just good. I mean, kaiju fans like us will gravitate to it because of the subject matter. We'll know the material.
But again, the ease of access of Netflix.
Exactly.
Again, it's like basically, I know it's not free promotion, but it's basically free promotion. I mean, you're paying to put it on Netflix, but
I mean,
so many, millions of people have Netflix that
all over the world too.
Word of mouth alone would help it.
I mean, we in the last episode we talked about some of the things that maybe hurt Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim was a big, $200 million film. A lot of people say, "Oh, it looks like Transformers." I don't really want to go check it. I want to have to pay the money. But I guarantee you, if somehow, blah, 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 what am I trying to say? Pacific Rim had been a bigger or hit, or rather, had been put on something like Netflix, it would have gotten top billing on Netflix, and everyone would have checked it out. Because even if it does look like Transformers, all right, you're sitting on your couch, you're at home, you're eating a turkey sandwich, whatever, and you're just going on Netflix looking for something to watch. Whatever, look at this. Okay, big robots fighting giant monsters. Whatever, I'll check it out. If I don't like it, if it's not good, I can just click off of it and go to something else. Whereas if you're in a movie theater, I mean, yeah, you could always walk out, but then you drove there, you paid money, you're sitting there, you might have a bag of popcorn, you could have, the bucket of soda that they try to pass off as a large now. It's a bucket with a straw, okay? Call it like what it is. You know what the large popcorn buckets used to be? Yeah, that's now that with a straw. Oh my God. But yeah, so you have to invest more of yourself, more time, more money to go to a theater. So if you're not really 100% sold on it, you're probably just gonna skip it over. Whereas if it's on Netflix and it's just as simple as clicking on it, watching it for a little bit, checking it out. If you're not interested, boom, you click off it, go to something else, no harm, no foul. But you're more likely to check it out. So obviously something that costs $200 million is not going to go straight to Netflix. But something that maybe costs like, 20 million or 50 million to make, yeah, that could be a Netflix film, and that could get top billing on Netflix. And if now that Netflix has this reputation of kind of quality, their movies, their shows are known to be very good. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people who probably gripe and say they don't like this or don't like that. But as a whole, overall, the general consensus is, okay, Netflix equals quality. And no, we did not get paid to say this, by the way. I know some people are thinking, boy.
Nah, man, we just...
Somebody got sponsored.
We are big appreciative people of Netflix.
If Netflix wants to sponsor us, I will pimp them out all day, every day. Yeah, I'll no joke. I'll put Netflix presents the Kaiju Cataclysm podcast unapologetically on the poster. But as of right now, we're literally just saying, hey, we like Netflix. But yeah, that's my point. Netflix has deep enough pockets now where they could do something like that. So, in terms of doing like original content, original kaiju films, something like Netflix could definitely be an outlet for that. And not just that, there's other streaming services that are really getting in the game again. Hulu has been around, but now they're really getting up on producing new stuff.
Amazon Prime.
Yeah, YouTube Red even. I know Legendary, the studio that is doing Pacific Rim and Godzilla. They have a show on YouTube Red now. I haven't checked it out. I don't even remember the name. I just recently saw it, but now, and that kind of is a good segue to my other point. We've been talking about just kind of original material. Hey, I just want to make some cool, smaller scale kaiju films. Great. But in terms of maybe following like the Marvel market, we're using something like Netflix to kind of expand on their cinematic universe outside of the theater. Like, how can we kind of push...
Wasn't there talk of doing like an animated Pacific Rim series?
Yeah.
Initially.
Oh yeah, back when, before...
See, it's like...
I don't know if that's still going on.
I know Netflix wasn't big back then. It probably isn't. But like, Netflix would be the perfect kind of...
place to host it.
Yeah,
I mean, again, look at something like Voltron and with how they're using it. And if something tells me if they were to do... But then again, I mean, I don't know if Legendary is already doing something like YouTube Red, or they would... But the point is using a streaming service... But doing all right. So if Marvel kind of has their Netflix, superhero universe, where these are people who, in theory, could show up in the movies at any point, but they're already established on the smaller screen.
Well, and it's funny too because they make mention of the events of the movies, but like in passing, they don't ever really
focus on it. It's not like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, which is on ABC, where the events of the movies actually affect plots of the show, where it's like. On Netflix, what's going on there? It's independent. It's happening in the same universe, and that's about it. So aside from mentioning,
I mean, somewhat same timeline, but it's not like a strict
well, yeah.
After the aliens invaded, this happened.
Yeah, it's just saying, hey, that happened anyway.
Yeah.
Back to our problems, and I think that's a smart way to do it. And it's funny because I already even said that I really wouldn't have mind if the Netflix universe was kind of complete, not in the same continuity, because again, I like it better, and I'm kind of getting to a point where like you look at a lot of what's happening in the Netflix universe, it's kind of like, well, with such bigger things happening in the cinematic universe, I feel it kind of detracts from it a little bit. It's like, why am I supposed to care about Kingpin wanting to take over New York City when you're going to have like Thanos coming down who's going to try to destroy the whole world? I'm just saying, if Kingpin were to be successful, who gives a damn when a giant alien titan's going to come down and just wipe everything out anyway. But okay, so let's say, you look at something like the Godzilla cinematic universe. They have the whole, hidden secret organization Monarch, which is basically they're monster hunters. And if you read the Godzilla Awakening, which was the graphic novel they did just prior to the 2014 movie, it was kind of like an expanded universe. They even showed like a big showroom of all the different kind of monsters that Monarch kind of studies and finds and captures, and they're not all kaiju. Some of them were like, you had something that looked like the Abominable Snowman in there. You had like kind of more smaller scale like monsters. So I always kind of figured like, okay, well that's the case. Monarch is based. You have kind of like the A-list monster hunters who are going after the Godzillas, the Mutos. And then you kind of have maybe the B-string guys who are going after, like, goblins, werewolves kind of thing. So you could even do a thing like that where, Legendary expands on that universe they've created and they can tell kind of smaller scale stories using something like a Netflix or a YouTube Red, that kind of stuff. So to basically really and that to kind of get interest for people too, people who again who may not necessarily ran out to the movies to watch these movies, who don't know what the hell a kaiju is, and that could be their introduction. They'll watch these shows, they'll watch these movies, and they'll kind of get into it, and they'll like it, and then they'll see the trailer for Kong Skull Island, see a giant ape, and be like, oh, that's a kaiju movie because it's just like those other things I watch. Or when they see the trailer for Godzilla 2 or Pacific Rim 2, they'll be like, I know what that is now because I was introduced to it before. And because they saw something else, they saw something that was easily accessible to them, and they liked it, now they're going to go check out these movies that before they might have not had any interest in, or not enough to go out to the movies to see it.
To commit.
Yeah, exactly. But now they understand the genre. So even if they've never seen a Godzilla movie, even if they never watched Pacific Rim, they understand the kaiju genre. So for them, they're not going to see a Godzilla movie. They're just seeing more of this genre that they like. It's why now superhero movies do so well. It doesn't matter if you've never even heard of the superhero, like Doctor Strange. I mean, they were never going to kick off the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Doctor Strange. People were
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, exactly.
Ant-Man.
Exactly. I mean, people even thought it was weird they were doing with Iron Man because Iron Man wasn't even that big of a name. It wasn't until the movie did really well. But some of these other ones, it's like they're doing them now because they can. Because all they need to do is say Marvel present, and they can literally have anything after it, and people go check it out because, oh, it's Marvel. It has now become synonymous with good filmmaking. Same thing with Netflix and their original material. It has become synonymous with quality. And I think that's going to expand to just streaming services in general because they know they're not kind of locked down to certain rules and regulations that you would get on mainstream television, or even like a kind of...
Well, basically the closest equivalent would be like a Starz or HBO or Showtime.
Like a premium channel. And even then, those I find that with like your Starz and HBOs, they are also very formulaic. They don't have to have kitty gloves on. They have the freedom to put as much blood and swearing and nudity as they want. But it kind of feels like you watch something like HBO. Everything on HBO is very like
gratuitous.
It's everything's extreme. If there's sex, there's a conversation like that Game of Thrones sequence where the guy is giving expository dialogue in the background, while in the foreground there were like two like
prostitutes,
lesbians just going at it. Which, granted, I'm not bashful, but I'm just saying it's like that clearly would let's do it because we can. You look at all the HBO shows, that's kind of how they are. Let's go over the top, I don't know. It's like if we're going to shoot someone, we're going to stick the barrel of a shotgun in their eye socket and blow the back of their head out and do like a slow-mo shot of all the brain matter splattering. So they have more freedom, but it's still very formulaic. If you watch HBO and you say, okay, there's a new HBO series, you know what to expect. You get the gist of it. Whereas I feel like with something like Netflix is it can be very different. You look at
Netflix, it really can be anything.
Well, yeah,
there's not like a certain genre they really focus on. There's so much original stuff like.
But and the approach to it is also different. I mean, you look at like something like Orange Is the New Black, which was kind of the first of that
their big popular original stuff.
Yeah, and then watch Stranger Things. They're very different. They're different. They're shot differently. Their format is different. Yet they're both on the same thing. They're not. They don't feel like the same thing. They're not approached the same way. So I think people are starting to think of like streaming services as like that, where anything and everything can exist there.
And again, the good thing too about Netflix is. There's some stuff like I know certain series or certain anime shows from abroad. They're like Netflix exclusives where they're not produced and made by Netflix, but they're exclusively like distributed through them. Yeah. As like a streaming.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of like BBC shows.
So
that do
even
that.
if so essentially anywhere in the world, people could start making kaiju stuff, series or movies. And they could still get it on Netflix.
Toho even, I don't know. I mean, I know Shin is doing very well, so I'm assuming they're going to keep making Godzilla movies, which hooray. But even if they wanted to do some smaller tokusatsu style effects, because I know there are some purists who are kind of like, oh, Toho's. But by the way, I know episode 2 we said Shin Godzilla was going to have a suit. There's no suit. It's all CGI.
Yeah,
He's
that was a surprise.
Yeah, it's all CG. So, but I'm sure that cost them a pretty penny.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure there's still some purists who are just like, oh, you're turning your back on the whole, which again I think is just dumb because
Well, when the studio itself does it. Like,
yeah, I'm like, all right, now if Toho themselves are doing it, like everyone
again,
stop
it's
bitching
like
about it.
Said they didn't do it because that was like the, best way to do it. It was just the best way they had at the time.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So obviously the fact that they can afford and do CG, well, why wouldn't you do it?
And if they want to be able to compete in a more mainstream market, well, they got to be able to compete. But okay, fine. But this would be a great way for them to kind of shut up all the fanboy purists. It's like, there you go. Here's a few smaller films of tokusatsu. There you have it. And again, too, it's like, because they're spending more money in the actual films now, they're not going to be able to crank a Godzilla movie out every year like they used to once upon a time. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 years in between, So in the meantime, this would be another great way for them to kind of keep promoting, kind of homegrown, kaiju material. And if they continue doing sequels to Shin Gojira, where if they continue that continuity, they could even do stuff in between. That's kind of what I'm even suggesting that Legendary do with their Godzilla cinematic universe. Where, okay, you have your big movies, and then you have like these smaller stories that are within the universe. So Toho could do something like that, and to expand upon it. So it's not just an American thing. Anyone and everyone can do this. This is something now. This is a new format that can be utilized by anyone and everyone, and have everyone benefit from. So again, back in the day, when I'm going through the sci-fi fantasy section of my local Blockbuster, I don't know, again, for some of you guys who are old enough to remember those, and I would see the cassette tape, the box of Zarkor the Invader, and I'm like, what is this? And it didn't even get put on the new release shelf. It didn't even get that. It got buried middle to bottom shelf on the corner of the sci-fi fantasy section, okay? And only because I knew what kaiju movies were, I picked it up. I was like, all right. And even then, I was kind of apprehensive to check it out because I was like, is this like a little bit? What is this? You know what I mean? The fact that it wasn't a Japanese film, it was, my first time seeing it, aside from Gorgo and Gangari, a kaiju film that was not Japanese. And that would have been the only way people would have saw that. They would have had to have happened upon it. You know what I mean? Because these films were not going to get a lot of press. They were not going to get a lot of attention. The internet wasn't there, so it's not like, people could go on forums and Facebook pages where these films would be produced. Now, if someone did a little low-budget, whatever, independent kaiju film, on my Facebook thing alone, I've got like 5 kaiju pages that that I like and subscribe to that I would be blowing up because of that. Back then, that would have not been the case. So now, you can do this more easily than ever before. You can produce smaller budget films that look better than any B movie from back in the day ever could ever hope to look, and you can make them more accessible now. You can make them more far-reaching than they ever could before. So, it is a good time, for like smaller independent, production companies to get it, to produce original material. So, in terms of the kaiju genre, until really we're getting a kaiju movie every year because it's just so big and so massive, this would be a great way to kind of introduce kind of the uninitiated, so to speak, to the genre. The way to get them interested in it. Basically, it's a low risk scenario. It comes to you. It's beamed right into your own living room.
And you don't have to pay anything more for it.
Exactly. If you already have a Netflix, you don't have to pay something additional to watch it. It's already there. It's already there. You obviously already have Netflix because there's enough on it that's worth you watching, that's worth you spending, whatever it costs now. I don't even know anymore, actually.
It was like 7 something, but I think they upped it to 8 or 9, but still, I mean,
for
everything you get, it's worth it.
Exactly. And
especially for people like us, we don't really watch TV, so.
Yeah. So again, and something like that, okay, you log into Netflix, boom, the title screen comes up, and that's the first thing you see. There's been so many movies and shows that we've watched because when we log in Netflix, it pops up.
Or stuff we've heard of, And then lo and behold, next month or, a couple months down, it pops up.
It pops up, yeah. A lot of foreign films we see that way, too. I'm like, oh, that'd be a curious film to check out. And the next thing I know, it's on Netflix. I'm like, sweet. So this is an opportunity, I think, that... And I'm sure these studios have... I don't think we're the only people in the world who've had this brilliant idea. But I think they're waiting. I think they maybe want to get another blockbuster under their belt to really. So again, if Pacific Rim 2 or Godzilla, I mean, honestly, if I keep forgetting, Skull Island comes out next year. That's the next big kaiju movie.
Well, and it'd be cool too, even if they didn't do something as like an offshoot, like if they did something as like
just original.
Well, like tying to a movie, but not like an unofficial prequel or an unofficial sequel. Well, I guess they would do a sequel, but even some stuff like that.
Well, yeah. Well, look at the Awakening graphic novel. But yeah, it worked as a graphic novel. That's fine. But you could have easily have done that as like an animated movie or like miniseries, and you still could. Like you can still use other, not just streaming, but that was the other thing too. In addition to just like kind of the outlet you use, you can use other mediums like animation. I mean, I know. Toho is doing a animated Godzilla film next year, like a CGI one. We'll talk more about that one on the anime podcast, but that's just another example of, yes, it's a movie, it's a theatrical film, sure, but they're using a different kind of medium to tell it, and more than likely, like, if that film doesn't get a theatrical release abroad, it'll probably for sure be on Netflix in not too long, and again, it's the idea of using different creative mediums and different creative outlets to kind of produce this kind of material for a genre. You're no longer just bound to one thing anymore, and I think that's great. So
again, if the studios do make big budget kaiju movies, I know Disney/Marvel recently signed a deal with Netflix, so I think within 3 months' time of a movie leaving the theater, it shows up on Netflix. It's like 3 months.
Yeah, it's pretty much that it goes on like digital on demand is when it's gonna start showing up.
So probably when it goes on like pay-per-view, maybe.
Yeah.
That type of thing. But again, like, I know, what is that?
What is paper? Is any people writer you a paper?
But yeah, like, I think it'd be cool even if they did that with, if they did release, smaller, still big budget, but smaller kaiju movies in theaters. Even if it was limited, I still think it should go on Netflix. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, usually the only time again, I know it was a thing where, like, unless it was a big film, if they didn't do so well, it would come on Netflix sooner. I was always like, why? If there's a demand for it, put it on Netflix right away. I mean... But yeah, so that's.
Again, even Redbox, I always forget about that. Basically it goes on one or the other.
Yeah, but it becomes accessible to, and for a lot of people, that's how they. I know Pacific Rim. That's how most people end up seeing the movie.
Yeah.
Was when it became home release. Because again, it's cheaper that way. You can watch it at home, and I think that's what it comes down to is comfort. If people are going to go out, because it's expensive to go to the movies now. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's not cheap. I mean,
well, and again, for better or for worse, that's why original movies never do as well, and that's why I think it's going to be especially hard for kaiju films to really be, like, it sounds lame, but accepted, because it's so different than what most people go to see, especially now with the superhero hype.
Well, yeah, because again, and that's what if you look at the first few superhero films that did, they were always, your Spider-Mans, your Supermans, your Hulks, kind of the known names. And now, of course, you're getting like anyone and everyone that has appeared in the pages of Marvel. It doesn't matter if they're popular or not. But that's the thing, and you can get these lesser known ones because. Because now Marvel has proven themselves. But again, like you said, comic book movies are now mainstream. Kaiju movies could easily become that, but they haven't gotten to that point yet. So I think if you can maybe kind of bolster them up a little bit elsewhere, it'll help kind of bring attention and interest to the genre. And so that way, when there's a kaiju film that comes out, more people are going to see it because now it's a part of that thing they all love and like.
Well, and they know.
I mean, that's the thing. If Legendary had produced or does produce like a a streaming show, a series that is within their Godzilla cinematic universe that, let's say, gets as popular as Stranger Things. I guarantee you, when Godzilla 2 comes out, it would be an even bigger hit because now it's a part of that thing that everyone loves. So now it has that association, has that name brand recognition. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. I mean, it's one of those things where the kaiju genre, it's building. I know it's been said that we're kind of in a new kaiju renaissance, and that's very much true. But it's still not on the same level in terms of how it's receptive.
There's a lot of opportunity. People just need to take that opportunity.
Exactly, and I think people are starting to take notice of that. So, that's basically... And even though it's doing stuff like crowdfunding, like Kickstarter films, I know there's been a few attempts to do like some Kickstarter. I know they've done I'm not going to name drop here because I don't want to get sued for anyone or anything, but there is a Kickstarter Godzilla fan film that's in the works. I think it got funded, it's being made. But even then, it's like, okay, but how much money can you really, how far can you really expand it if you're not the company that owns the rights to Godzilla? But do a Kickstarter kaiju film, like get people interested in it.
Well, you can still put that on YouTube though. You can't charge for it.
Well, yeah,
you can still get it out there.
But I'm just saying, if you're gonna do something, you might as well get paid for it too. I mean,
well, but if it's on Kickstarter, they are.
Well, yeah, but I'm just.
I see what you mean.
But I'm not just talking about getting the cost of production covered. Yeah. I mean, like, hey, put it on Netflix. But yeah, get it out there. Hell, getting it on like festivals, and well, maybe it would get on in a theater. You never know. But utilize all these different things that have come about through the internet that weren't around when Kra the Sea Monster and Zarkor the Invader were released. Because I guarantee you, if Netflix had been around then, that's how I probably would have watched them for the first time. It would have been, the only reason why I knew Kra was coming out because after the credits, back when it was not normal or cool to do post-credit sequences, there was a trailer after Zarkor, after the credit for Kra, and by a trailer I mean the logo for Kra the Sea Monster popped up, and you heard like splashing and a voice saying, "Kra the Sea Monster, coming soon." And by coming soon, they meant like 2 years later. Yeah. So that's my point. That was it. That's all we had. Now, like, the sky's the limit. So let's utilize this. Let's do something with it. Let's not just stop at movies on the big screen. Yes, Godzilla is a marquee name, and Godzilla should be a marquee name, and I don't want to see a day where we stop putting Godzilla movies in theaters. But you can do a lot of other monster movies, that don't have to be in the theaters. Kaiju, not every kaiju film needs to be on the big screen. In a perfect world, sure, why not? But we don't live in a perfect world. So let's look at what we have at our disposal and let's utilize it. They're all tools, that can only help. So that's, unless do you have anything else you really want to add? She's shaking her head and doing like a grumpy cat, like frown face right now. But yeah, so that's really it. I mean, again, I didn't want this to be a filler episode, but again, Shin Godzilla is a little too far out still for us to wait that long. But at the same time, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of kind of an industry episode. I want to kind of talk about like what can be done in the industry to kind of push this genre along. Because again, not just to milk it for the sake of milking it. I mean, yes, it's milking it, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to produce content that's different, that's new, and also do it in a different kind of way. So it's not making the genre linear. It can come at you at all different ways, different sides, different angles, different approaches, and one of those might be someone's cup of tea that normally wouldn't have cared about the movie, wouldn't have cared about a graphic novel, but hey, they like this miniseries. That format is just right for them. And because of that, now they're checking out the backlog of if it's part of a cinematic universe or not, or they're checking out other movies. They're going to new movies when they come out. It only helps. And again, I think now with Netflix, with the success of all the shows on Netflix, it's been proven that this is a kind of it's a winning formula. and it's a good format. So yes, the kaiju genre. Let's not limit it. Let's get it out there. Let's use what's out there now to really expand upon it. So, next episode we should be talking about Shin Gojira again.
And if you don't have your tickets, it's playing from October 11th to October 18th.
No, it's the 13th.
13th?
Yeah, it's only
the 18th.
No, 3 days.
Damn, wow.
I know. At least
Get
around
your
here.
tickets.
At least in America. I know it's being now. They've started announcing, I think, dates for Australia. It's going to be going throughout the Western world, basically. It's already been out in Asia. It's coming out in America. So it's making the rounds abroad, basically. So yeah, go definitely check it out. We will be talking about that film. And maybe when it does come out, there'll be more news around it, too, in terms of maybe a sequel or any other plans that Toho has. But again, if something else really big in the kind of kaiju world happens between now and then, we'll do another episode. But again, I thought it's already been a little bit since the last one we did, and I was like, we have to wait till still another 2 weeks before we can talk about that. It's going to be a big gap. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about this. And it's something that we've discussed talking about for a while. We just, hadn't really had an opportunity to, because again, there was a lot of big news, more immediate news stories coming out. So hopefully now, we figure, okay, this is a good time. Let's drop it in now. Let's talk about it, because obviously the next episode we're going to be focusing on that. And if there's, at this rate, any more news on like Godzilla 2, more concrete stuff, we'll be talking about that as well. So, but yep, that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank you, my lovely co-host, as always, for sitting with me and,
oh yeah,
talking about the stuff.
Talking about Netflix.
Talking about them Netflixes.
Talking about them kaijus.
Wow.
Cages.
The cages. The cages.
Yeah.
I've heard someone say that once like that.
Oh.
You like those Cages movie? I'm like, what, Nicolas Cage?
Oh, no.
Is Nicolas Cage in a kaiju movie? I heard that he was a Godzilla fan. I'm not saying that's pretty cool.
Maybe he wanted to be Godzilla like he wanted to be Superman.
I want to see Nick Cage do motion capture for Godzilla. I want Godzilla. Oh man, Shin Gojira, he's got Nick Cage eyes.
Oh my god.
If you know what Nick Cage, he does that thing where he like freaks out. It's kind of like how Mel Gibson, I think he had like a thing in his contract. He has to like do that almost cry thing in all his movies. Nick Cage has to have a crazy eyes moment like all his movies. And I'm look at when you see the Shin Gojira trailer or the Godzilla Resurgence trailer, depending on what it's being called in your neck of the woods. Look at his eyes. He's got Nick Cage eyes. Every time Nick Cage freaks out in a movie, he gets these big wide eyes. Oh my god. Yikes. Shin Gojira is Nick Cage.
Don't insult me.
No, but I have such a new appreciation for this movie, and I haven't even seen it yet. Oh. Anyway, now that I've dropped, now that revelation that I've given to the world, Shin Gojira is Nick Cage if Nick Cage was Godzilla. Okay, we're gonna leave now. Now that I've done that to all of you.
So me
and you. She has to live with me, damn it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. For checking us out on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe for more, kaiju news. And if there's something you guys want us to talk about, let us know.
Give us topics.
Yeah, even if you have any questions, post them in the comments. We'll get back to you.
You'll listen to our word vomit.
What?
It's our word vomit.
Our word vomit. Yes, that's what we do. We'll verbally vomit back to you. You're welcome. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.